So if any of the CBPAC members have any questions for Brad, feel free to ask. At the same time, if not, just let's work on ranking these the projects we reviewed today. All right. All right. No problem. All right, Greg, and then Bill.
We shouldn't rank the projects that are in our cities. Is that your recommendation for James and for myself?
Yes, that is my recommendation. It does. No, actually, it'll be okay. I think we once we see the scoring, let's see if it makes a difference. Because you won't be scoring your project when I do the average ranking, it won't count in there. So we should be able to. It shouldn't make a difference. It won't disadvantage. I guess better way to put it, it wouldn't disadvantage your projects not to review them, just because of the way the math works.
Okay, Bill.
Yeah, I guess I'm still unclear. We're ranking all of them 1 through 13, even though some of them are projects in our area. Is that right?
Yes, as long as it's not your agency sponsoring the project.
As long as it's not right. Yeah, okay. So those without an agency. Yeah, all right.
And strictly speaking, Greg, you're representing all of Southwest County, not Orinda.
That's correct.
But I take that back. It is true that the original way we did it is you wouldn't score ones in your own region.
Yeah,
so that means I wouldn't score the Lafayette one either?
Or the Moraga one?
Or the Moraga
one?
Does that seem unnecessarily strict?
Well, I mean, I think all of us probably have preferences for some. I don't know. I mean, we're all in from one place or another.
Yeah, I don't know if we need to be that strict anymore because we actually been out to the sites themselves, and I mean, I don't know if like James is going to be, I'll rank Lafayette 1, then Moraga 2, and Orinda 3. I assume not. And same thing with Greg, and I guess, well, Sean, I guess you only have the one, or only affinity to one project. But yeah, I don't think. Yeah, I could see it with maybe like our sponsored project, like not Lafayette or the Park District, but I mean to eliminate the whole like sub-region. I don't know.
Okay, is that the consensus that if it's your agency that's sponsoring the project, you wouldn't score it, but if it's just within your region and you're representing that region, you could still score the other projects in that region?
I can agree with that. I would also just say that, we ask and, commit. I commit, I have some particular affinity with some projects more than others, but I'm going to commit to making sure that whatever public funds it is that we are recommending allocation goes to the most, deserving and effective projects. I think that we can all hold ourselves to that standard.
Okay, so I guess that's the consensus that if it's your agency's project, you wouldn't vote on it. If it just happens to be in your region, go ahead and score.
So for those of us who aren't representing an agency, then we would score them all, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Both you, well, there are 3 of you who are citizen representatives of a region. And whenever you're ready, you can just hand me your scoring sheet. Test. Text me. At 5:17, I will say test. No, just the rankings. Test, test, test.
Hi, Brad. I actually have one question on a couple of the projects here. For the North Shore Bay Trail Gap closure, how much was the cost of that project, or is the cost?
They asked for $976,400.
Okay, and thank you. And then, Sean, I have a question for your project. How much?
The project cost to construct it
Or I guess the ask, or both, I guess.
is $1 million for the ask and the price to.
Oh, it's like 1.2 or 1.6, right?
We're asking for $1 million for
Okay.
that project, and the cost to construct engineer's estimate, well, it's not an engineer's estimate, but from the feasibility study was about 1.6 million.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So based on your ranking of the projects, Contra Costa Boulevard's number 1, Rumrill is number 2, Lone Tree Point Bay Trail is 3, North Shore Bay Trail Gap Closure is 4, Lafayette Town Center, Camino Pablo Bike Route Network on Barrett is 7. It's tied with the Plaza San Pablo Greenway Trail. L Street is number 9. Strategic Bike Ped Safe Routes to School Improvements is 10. El Cerrito is 11. San Pablo, the bridge over the BNSF rail line is 12. And then finally, the East Downtown Concord project. And let me show you the individual scores, because for some of the projects there was some disagreement. But I'll have to make it a little bit smaller so you can see them. So, for example, the Contra Costa Boulevard project, 4 people voted it number 1, but 1 person voted it number 10. Similarly with the next one, 1 person voted it number 1, 2 people voted it number 2, and the others were 6 and 4, but 1 person voted it number 9. This is the Rumrill project. Lone Tree Point, again, there was a number 10, ranked number 10 out of mostly 3, 4, 5, 6. North Shore Bay Trail Gap Closure, on the one on Goodrick, there we had 1 number 1, 2 number 2s, but also a 10 and an 11. And you can see similar differences throughout. Though when you look at the last one, the Concord project, there was a number 3, but most of them were, and a number 5, but most of the rest of them were 10, 12, or 13. And similarly with the Pinole project, the bridge project, there were a couple, there was 1, 2, and a 4, but most of them were 8 and above.
Do we have any idea as to what the cutoff point is?
Let
funding?
me.
Yeah, I have a question about, just to follow with that, I was going to ask, because you already, we're definitely going to fund 2 projects, the Pittsburgh, and I think what's the other one, I think one of the East Bay Regional Parks projects. So that's like $2 million, say they asked for the maximum. So what's the total, I guess, pot, Brad, for PBTF?
7, well.
So you could argue that the top out of these would be like 5, at least the top 5 would get funding?
Let me make this a little bit bigger so you can see it. So it's about 7.9. It's rough. It's around there, 7.91, I think, is the amount available. And the top 2 projects asked for about 2.387.
Well, they can only get up to $1 million each, right? So.
I take that back. It was 1,600 was the request.
Okay.
600 for the BART pedestrian bicycle connectivity project in Pittsburgh, and $1 million for the Pinole Shores project. So that's 1.6 million. That leaves about 6.3 million left. Yeah, 7.918 million is what's available. So let me calculate. Okay. And 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Thanks. Woo, what the heck? Plus. Oh. Sorry. One of the problems with trying to be too clever by half.
At almost 8 million total. I guess.
Yeah. So let me mark this down. So the cutoff would be, we could fund about 80% of the bike network on Barrett. And we would also fund the other ones before rated more highly. Now, it's also possible that since some of them were asking for funding through other programs, that there may be some TLC funding that would be put towards those upper projects, which means that we could go down the list a bit more. And it's possible that we could fund all of the bike route on Barrett and Plaza San Pablo Greenway Trail, maybe even the L Street. But I think the fundamental question for you is, first off, is does this order look reasonable? And would any of you want to argue to have one or more of those projects moved up higher in the rankings, and why you want to convince people here to change their rankings?
Is it too much to ask if we went down each of the projects and just ask the committee to express what they don't like about each project, maybe a weakness of the project, might explain why it was lower than, or it doesn't have to be a particular committee member, or even it just, I don't know. We don't have all the time in the world, but I'm just brainstorming here.
I mean, I would definitely like to draw attention to some projects and be like, why is this one, higher up on some people's minds and this one lower?
Well, I'd be willing to make a general statement about to that point about why some might have risen or fallen. Personally, as objectively as possible, I felt that there was a lot of merit in seeing certain projects on the ground in terms of closing in total gaps, whereas there are some projects that are supplementing one side or the other of a corridor where facilities already exist, but the new project being proposed certainly creates, kind of completes the street, so to speak. It may not be a full, complete street project. For example, that's why I didn't rank Contra Costa Boulevard as highly, because there are some elements of existing bicycle facilities, at least in one direction, I recall, whereas some of the trail gap closures are entirely filling, just missing links that just aren't there for the bike ped in a safe manner altogether. Not to mention, it didn't seem to jump off the page in application, just the level of use or potential use that could be brought about by expanding the Bay Trail in terms of connecting communities and intermodal centers, for example. So that would be one statement that I have in that respect. Greg?
When I was looking at the projects today, I tried to do my best to keep my focus on the original scoring sheet. Safety, connectivity to transit, latent demand, diversity of users. I just tried to keep the fundamentals in mind. And for me, the ones that dropped out, I didn't feel strongly that they had high marks in those components of the matrix, honestly. I mean, I don't know that we need to talk specifics, but we can, but that's just how things fell out for me.
Sean?
Well, just for now, speaking to the major discrepancy on the L Street pathway, where I ranked it number 1, and everyone else, didn't. I would say that a huge part of that ranking was that they're asking for such little amount of money. That it was similar in nature to some of the other Complete Streets projects, except that they're just asking for so little. That's what that's at least an explanation for that one from me. But
Bruce?
So it seems to me that the Lafayette Town Center pathway and BART bike station project should rank lower in the overall because it is just a nicety, but it didn't appear to me to add significant safety anywhere.
Sean? And I will add to that that it seemed like something that BART should just do. But it was a nice spot. I mean, really nice area, and I think it would be a nice amenity. But I guess I'm sort of echoing. That's why I ranked it a little lower. I thought there were other greater needs elsewhere.
One thing I noticed, Brad, just with the meeting with staff and the presentations, I think that is a big factor. I think the two I could speak to is one is the Pinole project. I mean, me not review. I mean, that was the first time I totally saw it, and I know nothing about it. And I think we all had that initial reaction, like, "Oh, this is it!" Like, it didn't seem like much of a project. And I think it would have been nice if they had a staff member from Pinole, talk more about the project. I think that might have helped. The other thing I thought that I don't know. I guess something to note also was like the final one with the Moraga project. I know they had a number of like intersections that we're going to work on, but it felt like because we only went to one intersection, and I felt like, oh, they just described. They're talking about these improvements, but we didn't go out to actually see them. And I think for me at least, it would have helped more in like having a more positive review of that project because. In my initial scoring, I had it, ranked really high, but that was, for me, I guess the biggest drop, just because, like I said, we just kind of talked about it, but didn't really, like, go out and really see, like, okay, this is what we plan to do. We just kind of hung around at one spot. And I don't know if that's also because, it was the last project we looked at, and we're kind of like, just want to get back, we're late. So those are my comments. Bill?
Yeah, I agree that the presentation can't help but have a little bit of an effect. You get the police chief, and then you have Lafayette, great presentation. We've got, clipboards and all this sort of thing, nice maps. I'm almost beginning to think that it would be better to look at the projects on the ground and then come back and evaluate the grant requests. I think my take is that it's so important to do this, to see them on the ground, that I almost think we're doing it in the reverse order.
I have to echo that sentiment. Before ranking them at all, go look at them.
I had thoughts on to the projects with the San Pablo Avenue bike improvements over BNSF. Actually, I had scored it pretty low originally, but seeing it on the ground, I scored it a lot higher because I felt that it did actually complete a very significant gap. And I just could feel for the residents who used to have a bridge, got the bridge taken away from them and replaced with nothing, no way to safely walk or bike across. And I think that maybe also our conversation about why isn't the larger project just funding that? I wonder how much that played a part in the multiple people ranking it as the lowest project. And then the other one is the Plaza San Pablo Greenway Trail, which I was surprised to not see higher up. That's the Wildcat Creek Trail in San Pablo, where for me it was another one. It was like it helps. It's creating a whole new one, right? Kind of like the Bay Trail or North Shore. So Bay Trail at Lone Tree Point or North Shore Bay Trail, but it creates a whole new trail in an area that's going to help commuters, seniors, people access the health center and the library, and avoid San Pablo Avenue. So in that regards, for me, it was one of the kind of up there.
Bruce?
I'm surprised that Antioch fell so far. Yeah, L Street and
Cynthia?
Bruce, you're the one who ranked it at number 8. I thought that was your first project.
Yeah, I know. It fell so far. I'm surprised that everybody agreed.
Greg?
I just want to get back to the comment on safety. I think without hard data or very intimate knowledge of an area, it's tough to talk about safety. I also think that we have to keep focused on what our ultimate goal is. And to me, our ultimate goal is to get people out of cars and get people biking and walking to transit and to work. And I think it's easy to speculate on safety and what areas might seem safe, unsafe, or safer, but that's a difficult one because our perception may be one thing, but reality might be completely different.
Sean?
So if one were to be influenced by this discussion and thought, well, maybe I'd be willing to change my score on 1 or 2 projects based on the discussion, how would we do that?
Well, I think that's the intent of having this discussion, is that we look at this initial ranking, get your thoughts when you see how each other scored the projects. If after the discussion you think, okay, I can see the benefit, or maybe I scored this one, maybe this project isn't as good as I thought it was, based on the comments the other members made, that they're still sitting here. I can get some red pens, and if you want to shift scores, I think we could do that and come up with a slightly different.
I guess I ask if you have anybody, if any of the CBPAC members want to nominate and talk about a project you think should be higher. Feel free to identify any.
Well, I would just propose at this point perhaps whittling the list, and one way to do that is because I had ranked Contra Costa Boulevard somewhere in the middle of the pack. I would be willing to concede that it is, basically effectively guaranteed to be worthy of this funding that they've requested. So I don't know if that basically means I'm willing to rank it higher. I would just say I would not argue with its position.
I would one-up you and say that the top 3 could go that way.
I guess maybe we'll do it. Brad, maybe it'll be similar to the previous our initial exercise of this. Do we want to just discuss maybe the 2 at the cusp, right above the big point, and 2 below, and maybe just discuss those?
Well, I would remind you that it's likely that some of those upper projects might get funding, so we will go below I'm almost certain that we will go below into the red, what's shown as red now, because there'll be some TLC money put on some of those projects. I don't know how much money will be put on those projects yet, so I don't know. But the key thing is the ranking. Which projects are better than others. I think based on as James pointed out, based on your ranking, the average was 3.6 for the Contra Costa Boulevard project, and the next one, the Rum Rail, was 4.3, and that's a pretty significant difference. But when you get into 3 and 4, the Lone Tree Point and the North Shore Bay Trail, they're essentially the same score. They're, when you go out to another significant digit, you'll see the difference, but basically they're 5.7, and it's likely that the Lafayette Town Center is pretty close as well to being the same. You get another jump from 5.8 to 6.7 when you get to Camino Pablo. I don't want to focus too much on averages, because they do hide some differences of opinion on the committee about some of the projects.
Brad, I have one comment on that, because you said you may dip into some of the projects that are in the red, just because some of the projects above may be using TLC funds. But from my experience going to all the RTPC, or at least 3 of the 4 RTPCs, or I guess 2 out of the 3 that are eligible for TLC funds, it seems like the jurisdictions that have TLC applications, they're more looking for, how can I explain this, looking to see if they get PBTF funds to supplement their TLC instead of the other way around, when they're relying on the PBTF and hoping for to supplement it with TLC. So, I think if they had a choice, I think, they're just they're relying on the TLC and just hoping for a PBTF. I guess that's my comment.
Yes, you're right that it works both ways. The RTPCs want to fund more of their projects with PBTF, and this group, you look at some of those projects that are in the red, you're thinking, they're actually have good points to them. So you'd like them to get more projects to get funded and hope that some of the TLC, some of the projects will be funded with TLC by the RTPCs. And I do think that, I'm trying to remember all the ones that applied. Let me see. Come on.
I have a question.
Yeah, Sean, please.
These rankings here and what we score are essentially visible to all of us here, and if there was an audience here, they'd see our rankings, right? Is this information available upon request? Like if somebody said, I want to know how Commissioner or how Sean scored blank, would they be able to get that information?
Don't save.
I have to check on that. We normally, no one asks for it, partly because we do the scoring and then we have these discussions at the end to get confirmation of the rankings, because we try to use the scoring as much as we can, especially when we get more quantitative. But we always allow some discussion and adjustment at the end of it.
Sean.
So I started to feel like we were getting somewhere when James suggested whittling down the list, because if we rank them here and then they actually get TLC funding, then their amount, possibly there could eventually be more money available, and then the ones on the cusp would then all of a sudden be funded, right? Just from process of elimination through the process as this goes on for the next month, right? Is that, assuming that if somebody's getting TLC funding, that it would supplement maybe this PBTF funding and then allow other projects lower on the list to get funded, but maybe that's not how it works. Is that?
Go ahead, Brad.
Well, that's going to be the fun part of this, because we want to get as many projects funded, and at a minimum, every RTBC will get the projects that they recommend. And it may be that the there's a certain amount of money that's set aside in TLC for every RTBC. So we have to spend that money in that region for their top-ranked projects. But it may be that one of these projects will use PBTF instead of TLC. They can go down their list. We're going to have to do a balancing act there because, however we go down the list for PBTF funding will depend on your recommendations.
Sean. Okay, so back to the weeds. I thought I would just jump out there and say that, I scored both the Greenway, San Pablo Greenway Trail, and the North Shore Bay Trail gap closure fairly high. When I start comparing the Greenway Trail versus the North Shore, the Greenway it had connections to library, it had connections for seniors, it was near downtown. I mean, it had far more bang for the buck, right, than a similar Class 1 trail project that was basically out in the middle of nowhere, right? And so I guess, but that's what, I'm surprised that the Greenway Trail is so much lower based on that information. I want to see both projects happen, don't get me wrong. But just back to what James said. Sorry, I'm waxing here because it's like 6. It's been a long day. I think we can say that the Contra Costa Boulevard Improvement Project is in, and let's just make it. Now we're talking about 12 projects, and maybe we can go from there.
I mean, you certainly can do that and say that we are going to set aside $1 million in PBTF money for that project, just as we had for the 2 other projects. And if there's agreement, that's for the committee. That's definitely what we can recommend.
I would even take that one step further to say, just looking at the list as a whole, even the higher ranked ones, except for Rumrill, I don't know that there's any project that does not have someone or multiple people ranking it in the double digits. So even if it has an average ranking, for example, if you were to take number 3 on this list, SF Bay Trail, there is a ranking that's relatively low, number 10, but that's true for almost every single one of them. And so I'm just going to say I think the top 3 in this case have proven merit based on the applications in the site visit today, unless someone feels strongly otherwise.
Question?
Bruce, then Greg. Can't rank your own project.
Oh, okay.
Greg, you had a comment?
Well, I guess it's just a general comment. I mean, we all saw the sites today and ranked them, and this is how it turned out. And we could argue for the next 6 hours about the order of things, but we did our best effort on trying to rank them. So I don't know another fair process. I think if someone has a particular issue with a particular project, good or bad, that they want to advocate for, I think we can do that. But beyond that, I mean, it is what it is. I'm not quite sure how else we can move forward with a fair process.
And that's how I feel too. I mean, going back to what James just said, I'll get you in a second, Bill. The 3rd and 4th ranked project I ranked low in comparison to the others, and the last project I ranked pretty high, but I have no issue. I mean, that's just my vote. I mean, if everybody else has, if the average of the rank ends up being higher or lower than what I ranked, I have no problem with that. Yeah, because I mean, yeah, as Greg said, we could argue this all day, but I feel like, hey, this is a rank. I mean, that's why I'm not doing it exclusively. We have a whole group, and yeah, I'm fine with the the aggregate average. So that's my comment. Bill, you have?
It's a strong ditto. We've gone through this long process, several meetings, and the trip today. we have ranked them, and for better or worse, and again, if nobody else has a complaint, I'm perfectly happy where we're at. This is a collective judgment already, so if no one else has a problem, I'm all for ranking, proving the ranking, and whatever money can be available to those projects. So.
Same with me.
James?
I'm prepared to make a motion to accept the list, the rankings, as they are shown on the screen, unless there's dissent.
Do I have any additional comments or a second? Bill? Okay, second. Okay. Well, I will have Sean, I guess, Sean, if you want to speak, Ernie.
I'd like to change one of mine.
Okay, if that's fine with it, I'm okay. Actually, does anybody have any of the CB PAC members have any issue with Sean changing?
No, I'll change one of mine also.
Okay, yeah, feel free. We have a final. I mean, actually, yeah, if people want to change, I think that's fine as well. Like, I guess with James and Bill, I mean, you might have to hold off on that. Actually, do we have to? I guess
You can just hold it.
discuss the motion.
You can
Yeah.
hold, yeah.
Okay.
Well, we vote on that motion, and then we'd have to, if it doesn't pass, it doesn't pass.
Okay.
You haven't voted yet. So.
Okay. But yeah, Sean, Bruce, if you want to make some changes, feel free.
Come on.
Okay. Raise Antioch up 1 from where it was, and the Dead Snake visitation, lower it down 2 from where it was.
Hold on, I have to
The
find-
Dead Snake is North Shore Bay Trail, 01 is its number. I mean, skip 2 from where it is and then put it in.
So which,
It might be easier if you go and actually change the thing on the paper.
so you want to move North Shore down?
I want to move North Shore down, yeah, the Dead Snake one. From where it is in the ranking there, move it, skip 2 and then put it in, please.
Well, I think
You know, you better, for that one, that's too complicated for me. You're going to have to come in and do it.
James.
And we are speaking of changing individual rankings, not suggesting changing the overall ranking.
Just
of the-
for his own score.
Just my own score. I want to move this one and put it in. And I want to move Antioch.
Okay. So this one, well, since you're moving, okay, so this one goes after Barrett. This one goes after Bay Trail, Lone Trail. Okay.
Yeah, I understand that the order in which you put them in will change, and I want the order to be, so we'll change the
Yeah.
order, and I want the order of changes to be the Dead Snake lower down to Antioch up 1,
Okay.
in that order.
Okay, let me word that.
And it's not that I don't want that to
No, of course not. So.
I apologize for complicating your mind.
But I noticed it's, I think it's going straight by presentation now. That's the thing. Like, your present and comment, I didn't rank that. I never reviewed it, so I might change things too. I did the whole application. Yeah. But
It's my slow brain, that's all.
It is a long, hard day.
I mean, it's cool that, hey, I'm like low with the average, the cumulative average, so it's like, hey, it's still a good target. So I was like, okay, that's fine with me. Yeah. Yeah, the bonus, yeah. Yeah, okay. That always there. I can say for the it's like, but yeah, that language would also stuff like PBT, and not the other way. I haven't done it yet. I think all the PBT thing. So I think we also yeah, yeah, yeah. I think people are going to see people are angry for that. Yeah, one could yeah, could be control. Yeah. Because influence first one. First one. Maybe you have
Okay.
you know, but then I'm talking that
I swapped some things around, so if you just go down the list, these are now my right.
Okay. Yes.
Four. Okay, with those two changes, it doesn't really change the scores in a fundamental way. Though the bike route for Barrett goes down, if I remember correctly.
It goes up, North Shore goes down.
It does?
I
can't
see the
remember.
biggest change at the Greenway. San Pablo Greenway has bumped up two at least.
Barrett went down a lot.
Okay. So we have a motion on, are there any more discussion?
Can you please repeat the motion?
Yeah, just to repeat the motion, have a motion. Oh, go ahead, James.
Motion that the committee recommends approval of the rankings as presented.
And have a second. Second from Bill. All right. Yeah. It's a long day. Actually, any other last final comments on that? Anything else? Okay. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
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 Aye. All right. Any nays? Any abstentions? All right, Brad, you have it?
Thank you. Yes, I'm going to save this now. It is saved.
Thank you, everybody. It's been
Yes.
a fun day.
Thank you. I appreciate all your hard work reading all those applications.
I guess I'd say, we'll adjourn this meeting to the next one on Monday, May 22nd at 11 a.m.
That's, didn't, we,
So you'll send this to us, and it'll be official. Thank you all for driving from the back seat. I appreciate it.